There's one thing about the road. If you stop moving, you're dead. Tommy's voice cut through the night air. He glanced at Benny, his knuckles white around the steering wheel. Never trust a place like this. Benny just laughed, carefree as always. Relax, man. It's just another stop. I'm starving. He jumped out of the truck, eyes on the flickering neon sign ahead of them. But Tommy felt his stomach twist. Something wasn't right. He couldn't put his finger on it, but the quiet, God, it was too quiet. The truck stop looked like any other. Faded neon lights, cracked windows, but the stillness in the air gnawed at Tommy's gut. The kind of silence that felt like something was waiting. He followed Benny inside, trying to shake it off. The smell hit first. Stale coffee. Maybe even something worse. A couple of truckers sat at the counter, not even moving. Their eyes fixed on their plates like they hadn't blinked in days. Tommy glanced at Benny, but his buddy was already cracking some dumb joke about trucker horror stories. Man, look at this place. You could shoot a movie here. Benny's voice echoed in the dead space, loud enough to make Tommy wince. Marge, the waitress, shuffled over with a look that could cut steel. She glanced out the window, quick, like she was expecting someone. Tommy caught it, but Benny didn't, of course. He was too busy grinning like an idiot, probably thinking about burgers or some other trash. They sat down, Benny still talking too loud. But Tommy couldn't shake that feeling. The place, it felt stuck, like time wasn't moving. His eyes drifted to the clock on the wall. Broken. The hands hadn't moved in an hour. Hey, he muttered, nudging Benny, who just waved it off. Come on, man, it's just an old clock. Benny didn't care. He never did. One of the truckers got up, walked slowly toward the door. Tommy watched him, waiting for him to come back. He didn't. Tommy shifted in his seat. I'm gonna check it out, he said, but Benny grabbed his arm. Stay, man. What's the rush? Benny grinned like he had it all figured out. Tommy wasn't smiling. He'd seen this kind of thing before. Not exactly like this, but close enough. Marge dropped their food on the table without a word. Roads get bad past midnight, she said flatly. Benny laughed, but Tommy heard it. The edge in her voice like she knew something they didn't. Tommy needed air. He stepped outside for a smoke, the night air cold against his skin. That's when he heard it. A faint rhythmic tapping coming from one of the trucks in the lot. Slow. Deliberate. His feet moved on their own, carrying him toward the noise. The truck was empty, nothing inside. But the tapping kept going, like it was coming from inside the walls. He didn't stick around to find out what it was. Back inside, Benny was laughing again. You're losing it, man. It's all in your head. Tommy's eyes wandered around the diner. An old photograph caught his attention. A group of truckers sitting at the very same table. One of them, she looked like Marge. He squinted, and before he could think too hard, Marge stepped closer. You boys missed your road, she whispered, her voice colder now, that smile fading fast. Tommy's hand shot out, grabbing Benny's arm, but it was too late. The door slammed shut, the sound echoing through the diner like a final warning. The room shifted. The truckers? Gone. Vanished like they were never there. The air was thick, heavy, suffocating. Benny finally stopped laughing. He was at the door, banging, shouting for help. Tommy stayed calm. Too calm. He'd been trapped before. He knew this game. That's when it clicked. The sign they passed on the way in. No exit beyond this point. The truck stop wasn't just a stop. It was a trap. They were already too deep in. Benny's panic hit hard, his voice breaking, pleading. We gotta go, man. We gotta get out of here. His phobia of silence was creeping up on him fast, like a living thing clawing at his throat. Tommy forced him to calm down, pointed out the window. Look. Outside, nothing seemed real anymore. The trucks? Gone. Even the lot looked different, warped somehow, like the world was folding in on itself. Tommy walked over to the jukebox, his fingers tracing the buttons. Play the right song, fix the problem. he muttered, selecting an old country tune. The music cut through the air, filling the silence, drowning out Benny's frantic breaths. Then the lights flickered. Out. Complete darkness. That tapping, it came back, louder now, closer. When the lights came back on, they weren't in the diner anymore. They were outside. The place looked abandoned, dark. The trucks, the lot, all empty. Benny thought they'd escaped. He was already running toward the truck, shaking, desperate to leave. But Tommy's gut told him something different. That cold feeling creeping up his spine, telling him they were nowhere close to being out. They jumped into the truck, Benny in a full-blown panic now. Tommy started the engine, but as they drove, he kept glancing in the rearview mirror, his eyes locked on it. Marge. She was sitting in the back seat, smiling. "You never really leave, boys?" Benny whipped around, but she was gone. The road stretched ahead, but they weren't moving. Tommy's hands were glued to the wheel. No matter how fast he drove, the landscape outside stayed the same. Benny lost it, pounding on the dashboard, yelling at Tommy to turn around, do something. But Tommy knew better. This was the trap. The road was a dead end, a loop they couldn't break. The tapping came again. This time from the back of the truck. Benny and Tommy exchanged a glance. Terror etched in both their faces. Tommy pulled over. The second the truck stopped, everything went wrong. The air grew thick with dread. They stepped out. The diner's lights were back on, truckers inside, just like before. Benny screamed, grabbing at Tommy's arm, begging him to drive away. But Tommy knew better. There was no escape. Marge stepped out of the diner, calm as ever. "You'll drive forever if you keep running," she said, voice steady, like she'd said it 1,000 times before. Tommy didn't wait. He walked back to the truck, left Benny on the ground, too far gone to save. As he drove off alone, the world outside warped around him. Nothing real anymore. He looked in the rearview expecting Marge, but it wasn't her this time. It was his own face, hollow-eyed, twisted. The last thing Tommy heard was Marge's voice, soft, like a whisper, repeating his own words. "Keep moving, or you're dead." Story 2. I'll never forget that drive. Dark highway stretching for miles, my hands gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The fear was creeping in. That deep kind of fear we all get when we've been on the road too long. Caleb warned me about these desolate stops. Said people never leave. I didn't take him seriously then. Maybe I should have. The truck stop loomed up ahead, run down and forgotten, like a ghost from another time. Fatigue hit me like a punch. There wasn't another stop for miles, and my eyes were starting to close on their own. I pulled in, the engine grumbling to a stop. Only one other truck was there, a rusty old thing that looked like it had been abandoned for decades. It gave me the creeps, but I brushed it off. I had to. There's no time for being jumpy on the road. You're either tough or dead. Inside, it was just another greasy diner. Empty. Quiet. The silence buzzed around me. Unnerving. A waitress, half asleep behind the counter, waved lazily. I gave a nod, barely noticing her. What I did notice, though, was Caleb. He was sitting in the back, sipping his coffee, looking like he had been waiting for me. That didn't make sense. He wasn't supposed to be here. Said he wasn't on this route. My gut twisted, but I still went over to him. Figured he had some kind of explanation. "Hey, Danny," he said, voice dry, humorless. Something was wrong, though. He wasn't meeting my eyes. Every sentence was short, clipped. Weird. That wasn't like Caleb. He was the guy who'd crack jokes even if the world was burning down. Before I could press him, he stood up and walked out, without another word, leaving his food untouched. I watched him leave, confused. Then I stepped outside too, stretching my legs. That's when I noticed my truck wasn't where I parked it. It had moved. My mind raced. Fatigue? It had to be. But something about it didn't sit right. Back inside, Caleb was gone. His booth empty, just like that. The waitress, the truckers, they were all whispering, glancing at me like I was the odd one out. I approached the waitress. Asked her about Caleb, but she just shrugged, didn't even know his name. That's when I saw the photos on the wall. Old truckers, their faces frozen in time. 1997, 1985, 1964. Same faces, same expressions, like they never aged. My stomach dropped. I rushed out, keys in hand, ready to leave this place in the dust. But the truck wouldn't start. I slammed the wheel, frustration boiling over. That's when the knock came. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Caleb was back, his face pale, his eyes wild. "Danny, you gotta go. You can't stay here. You didn't listen." I locked the doors, heart pounding, told him to get lost. Whatever joke this was, I wasn't playing. Caleb stepped back, his face twisted in fear. Fear I didn't want to understand. The truck roared to life suddenly. I wasn't about to question it. I tore out of that lot, but Caleb's voice crackled over the CB. "You didn't leave anything behind, Danny. Go back." What the hell was he talking about? My foot hit the brake. I glanced in the rear view, and that's when I saw it. The license plate. It wasn't mine. That panic hit me like a wave. I jumped out, checked the truck. Everything seemed normal, except that damn plate. What was going on? Then I looked around, and the blood drained from my face. The truck stop was gone. Just empty highway stretching into nothingness. My phone. Useless. The clock was frozen. Caleb's voice came again, louder now. "You missed the details, Danny. You're not seeing it." I was shaking, trying to make sense of it all. The truck stop wasn't real. It never was. I was trapped. Time didn't move here. Everything felt like an echo. Desperate, I hit the gas, hoping to outrun whatever hell I was stuck in. But no matter how far I drove, the same truck stop appeared, over and over. The voice on the radio changed, became familiar, haunting. It was my brother's. "You made the same mistake, Danny. You didn't pay attention." I swerved, trying to clear my head, but his voice grew louder, accusing, blaming. Just like the night he died, the headlights flickered, the radio went dead, and there it was again, that rusty truck, parked ahead like it was waiting for me. My heart hammered in my chest. I pulled in, the diner darker now like it was decaying before my eyes. Inside, I demanded answers. The truckers just stared, blank and empty. Finally, one of them spoke. "You've been here before, haven't you? You just don't remember." A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't possible. I stumbled outside, eyes scanning the lot, but all I saw was that same beat-up rig. Caleb stepped out from behind it, his face filled with sorrow. "You can't leave, Danny. You never could." "No," I whispered. It couldn't be true, but it was. The accident, my brother's death. I'd been driving in circles ever since, reliving it. I fell to my knees, memories flooding back. Caleb reached out, but I screamed, telling him to stay away. I didn't want to believe it. The radio crackled one last time, my brother's voice. Soft. "It's over, Danny. You never made it out." I staggered to my feet, determination burning in my veins. I climbed back into the truck, ignoring the dread that gnawed at me. I drove faster. The road stretched endlessly. The stars blurred. The truck stalled again. Same rig. Same nightmare. My brother's voice cut through the silence. "You've been driving dead, Danny. It's time to stop." The truth hit me like a freight train. I never survived that last stop. I'd been stuck here, missing the signs. Over and over. The radio went silent. I closed my eyes, knowing now I was part of this place. Trapped in a loop of my own making. There was no way out. Story 3. I should have known better. Something was waiting for us that night. Something we should have seen coming. But Patch and I were too damn tired to think straight. Too tired to notice how messed up things were getting. We'd been on the road for hours, pushing through the mountains, miles of nothing stretching out in front of us. The kind of desolate highway that eats away at your mind. Patch was slumped in the driver's seat, eyes half closed, while I sat next to him, camera in hand as always, filming the endless blackness outside. I do that, I film everything. Can't help it. Gotta leave a mark. Something to show I was there. That I mattered. "It's like a haunted road, man," Patch joked, barely awake. His voice cracked a little, like even he wasn't sure he was kidding, but I brushed it off, kept recording. Everything felt eerie, like we were driving into something, but I didn't say it out loud. Then we saw it. Out of nowhere, a rest stop popped up. Brand new, spotless, like someone just built the damn thing. But we hadn't seen it on any maps, hadn't heard a thing about it from other drivers. My gut twisted. Something wasn't right. "Patch, you see this? This stop wasn't here before, man," I muttered. The camera aimed at the neon sign flickering above. Patch shrugged, too tired to care. "Whatever, dude. Let's just fuel up. I'm starving." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. We were both exhausted. "Fine, we'll stop," but my gut was screaming at me. We pulled in, the lot so clean it looked fake. Not a single truck in sight, just ours. I filmed it all. The empty parking spaces, the weird silence hanging in the air. Patch didn't care. He marched straight into the diner, leaving me behind with my doubts. Inside, the place was just as spotless, like one of those old diners from the 50s, frozen in time. Except for the waitress. She stood there, staring at us with these dead, robotic eyes. I swear she didn't blink once. Patch didn't even notice, just plopped down and ordered a meal like nothing was off. I kept filming, my hands starting to shake. The whole place felt wrong, too quiet, too perfect. Then I looked back at my camera and froze. There, outside was an old rusted truck. I hadn't seen it pull in. I swear it wasn't there before. "Patch, you see that?" I asked, pointing to the window. Patch waved me off, shoveling food into his mouth. "Dude, relax. You're always paranoid." But I couldn't shake it, and when we walked outside, there were more trucks. Rusted, beaten up, looking like they'd been there for decades. Only they hadn't. They couldn't have been. My heart pounded in my chest, my hands clenching the camera tight. "Okay, seriously, man," I said. "Something's not right. These trucks weren't here when we pulled in." Patch laughed, but I saw the tension in his eyes. "You're losing it, Jack." Then, just as I turned back to our truck, it happened. All the trucks, including ours, were gone. Vanished. My heart dropped into my stomach. I checked the camera, replayed the footage, but it didn't make sense. It was like they'd never been there. "What the hell's going on?" Patch shouted, panic finally setting in. We bolted back to the diner, but when we got there, it wasn't a diner anymore. It was a pile of rubble, like it had been abandoned for years. Just an old gas pump standing there, rusted and broken. Patch was losing it, yelling and cursing, but I couldn't think straight. My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of what was happening. Then in the distance, I saw headlights. Another truck coming down the road. "Finally," I muttered, waving my arms, trying to flag the guy down. But the truck kept coming and passed right through us, like we weren't even there, like we were ghosts. Patch started screaming that we were dead. I wanted to tell him to shut up, but I couldn't. Deep down, I was starting to believe him. We tried walking, tried getting away from the station, but no matter how far we went, we always ended up back there. The trucks were multiplying now, more and more of them, all rusted, decayed. And that's when it hit me. I recognized some of them. Trucks from stories I'd heard. Drivers who'd gone missing over the years. Patch wanted to destroy something, tear the place down. But I knew it wasn't real. It couldn't be. We were stuck in some kind of trap. A trap for lost souls. Faceless shadows sat in the trucks now. Drivers who didn't even look alive. Just empty shells. I started piecing it together. We weren't alive. This place wasn't for the living. It was for those who couldn't let go. All those missing truckers, they weren't missing. They were here, trapped like us. Patch was breaking down, begging me to get us out. But there was no way out. Not for him, not for me. My only plan, my last shot, was to destroy my camera. If I erased the record of me being there, maybe I could break free. I smashed the camera and Patch vanished, just gone. That's when I knew. He wasn't tied to the camera, it was something else. I tried to stay calm, but I couldn't shake the fear of being forgotten, of fading into nothing. Then I saw it. The diner back again, pristine as ever. Another truck was pulling in, just like we had. I wanted to scream, to warn the driver, but I couldn't. My voice was gone. My body wouldn't move. I was just there, watching. Another soul falling into the same trap. And I realized it wasn't the station that trapped us. It was our fear. The fear of the road, of being forgotten, of dying out here alone. That fear is what kept us tethered to this place. The trucks kept coming. The drivers kept disappearing. And I was just a shadow, powerless to stop it. Forever stuck, forever watching. And in the end, I understood we did this to ourselves, and now we'd never leave. Welcome to the Lost Highway. It'll be your last stop.